Would you rather retire in Thailand at 50 or wait until you're 65? Sit with that for a second, because most people answer that question instantly. Obviously 50 or obviously 65, be sensible. But neither answer means much until you understand what you're actually trading. Because that's what it is, a trade. Retire at 50 and you're buying 15 extra years of freedom. Mornings that belong to you. More time while you're still relatively young. And 15 years you don't have to spend working. Wait until 65 and you're buying something else. A bigger pension, more savings, a longer financial runway, and potentially a lot less worry about money. Neither one is free, and that's the part people skip over. So by the end of this video, we're going to work out what those 15 years are actually worth to your money and to your life. Most retirement plans come down to numbers: pension, savings, monthly spending, housing and healthcare. People will spend hours working out whether they can afford a condo in Hua Hin or a house in Chiang Mai. But there's one thing that's much harder to put on a spreadsheet: time. 15 years isn't just a number. It's 15 more years of waking up in Thailand instead of getting up for work. 15 more years to travel, explore, go somewhere you've never been, or just wake up and decide what you want to do that day. And that's the bit people don't really put a value on. Because those 15 years have to be paid for. If you retire at 50, you're buying time. If you wait until 65, you're buying more financial security. And the question is, which one is worth more to you? Let's start with the case for 50, because I think it's stronger than some people realise. But it's not as simple as just saying, retire early and everything will be great. The first thing is energy. I'm not saying everyone at 50 is going to be fitter than someone who's 65. Obviously not. But for a lot of people, 50 is simply a different stage of life. Long travel days, walking around a new city for hours, exploring somewhere you've never been. You might be able to do all that at 65. But for a lot of people, it's just easier at 50. And then there's the obvious one: time. You don't have to wait another 15 years to start living the life you're thinking about. You get to use those years while you're still relatively young, rather than hoping you'll have the same energy and freedom later. And there's the flexibility. At 50, you might still want to move somewhere new, learn a new language, make a completely new group of friends, or spend 6 months trying out another part of Thailand, just because you can. Now, you can absolutely do those things at 65, but for some people, they become a little harder. And then there's health. I'm not a doctor, and I'm not going to tell you what your health will look like at 65. None of us know. You might reach 65 with more money than you ever imagined, and that's great. But you don't know exactly how much energy you'll have, how mobile you'll be, or what you'll actually want to do by then. And I think that's one of the most uncomfortable parts of waiting. There's also something quite nice about simply getting your time back. I'm not going to go too deeply into that because I've talked about purpose and life after work in another video. For this video, it's really about the trade-offs. There are some very real advantages to retiring at 50, but those extra years don't come for free. Retiring at 50 doesn't just mean funding 20 or 25 years of retirement. For a lot of people, it means funding 30, 35 years, maybe 40 plus years. And that's a completely different financial problem from retiring at 65. Think about what changes. Your pension might not even be accessible yet. In many countries, you simply can't access certain pensions until in your 60s. So at 50, you could be relying heavily on savings and investments to bridge that gap. And those savings have to last a lot longer, which means more years of exposure to market downturns, more years of inflation eating into your spending power, more years of currency movements between your home country and the Thai baht, and more years where something unexpected could happen. Here's a simple way to think about it. Someone retiring at 50 could have to fund 15 additional years of everyday life compared with someone retiring at 65. Same lifestyle, same spending, same monthly budget, just 15 more years that the money has to keep working. That's not a small adjustment. That's a fundamentally different retirement plan. And I want to be honest with you here, because this channel isn't about selling you a fantasy. Early retirement gives you more time, but it also gives your money more work to do. 15 extra years of freedom means 15 extra years your finances have to survive. Now let's flip it and give 65 a fair hearing. By 65, a lot of people are in a very different financial position. A bigger pension, more savings, maybe the mortgage is paid off, fewer financial obligations. And there's another advantage. You know yourself better. You've had decades to work out what you actually spend and what you actually need and what kind of retirement you really want. That can mean arriving in Thailand without constantly checking your bank balance or worrying that one bad year in the markets is going to force you back to work. And that's important. Financial freedom is a form of freedom too. There's a big difference between having freedom and actually feeling free. If you've got enough money behind you, you can enjoy Thailand without that constant background worry. But there's a price to waiting. What if you're financially ready at 65, genuinely, comfortably ready, but you're not quite the same person you were at 50? I'm not saying that happens to everyone. I know plenty of incredibly active 65 and 70-year-olds here in Thailand. But none of us know exactly what our energy, mobility or appetite for adventure will look like 15 years from now. And that's a different kind of risk. Money can be saved. Time can't. You can earn more money later. You can rebuild your savings after a bad year. But you can't get back the years you spent working. And I think that's really the heart of this whole decision. Retiring at 50 carries financial risk. Waiting until 65 carries time risk. The question is, which one are you more comfortable taking? So why does any of this matter more here than it would say in, let's say, retiring in the south of France or staying in Florida? Because Thailand can genuinely lower what it costs to live a comfortable life compared with a lot of Western countries. Housing, food, transport, everyday services, certain health options, all of that can add up to a lower monthly income than you'd need back home. But I want to be really clear about something. Because this channel isn't about selling you a fantasy. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that you can live like a king on $1,000 a month. That stopped being realistic a long time ago, if it ever was in the first place. And location matters enormously. Someone living simply in a provincial town has a completely different cost of living from someone renting a condo in central Bangkok or living near the beach in Pattaya or Hua Hin. Those are very different lifestyles, even though they're all in Thailand. The honest version is this. Thailand may allow some people to bring their retirement forward because the income they actually need can be lower than it would be back home. But that doesn't mean everyone should retire at 50 just because Thailand is an option. Cheaper isn't the same as safe. There's one cost people often underestimate when they're planning an early retirement: healthcare. At 50, you might look at today's insurance premiums and think they're manageable. But you're not planning for today. You're potentially planning for the next 30 or 40 years. Insurance generally gets more expensive with age, and pre-existing conditions can make getting cover harder later on. Some people eventually choose to self-insure instead, building their own healthcare fund. And that's the point. Retiring at 50 doesn't just mean funding your lifestyle for longer. It can also mean funding your healthcare for longer, at exactly the time when it's likely to become more expensive. That's very easy to underestimate when you're 50 and feeling perfectly healthy. After talking to people going through this decision, I think I've identified one of the biggest mistakes. It's thinking, if I can technically afford to retire, I should retire. But those are two very different things. If you're checking your bank balance every few days, worrying about the exchange rate, avoiding restaurants, skipping trips, and treating every unexpected expense like a crisis, that's probably not the retirement you imagined. And there's another side to it. Some people already have more than enough, but keep working for another 5 or 10 years because they're scared to spend what they've earned. So I think the real question isn't, how much money can I possibly accumulate? It's, how much do I actually need to feel secure and enjoy my life? Because those numbers can be very different, and Thailand can change that calculation. Someone who needs $4,000 a month to live comfortably back home might find that they can live a very good life here for considerably less. But that doesn't mean you should cut your safety margin to the bone. If anything, I'd look at it the other way around. A lower cost of living means your money can stretch further. And that's what you're really looking for: margin. Enough breathing room that any unexpected expenses don't become a crisis, but not so much that you spend another 10 years building a pile of money you don't actually need. That's the balance. So who should actually retire at 50? I'd say it makes sense if you've got enough income or savings behind you, a realistic budget, an emergency fund, and you've thought properly about healthcare. And you're not relying on everything going perfectly for the next 30 years. But just as importantly, you actually want the freedom now, and you've got something you want to do with it. Because 50 isn't automatically better, and neither is 65. Waiting until 65 can make perfect sense if you need more time to build your pension and savings, want a bigger safety margin, or simply aren't ready to walk away from work. There's nothing wrong with that. Waiting isn't failure. Sometimes it's just being honest with yourself. Living here, I've seen people make both choices. And the happiest ones aren't necessarily the people who retired earliest or waited longest. They're the people who worked out what they actually need to feel secure and didn't spend another 15 years chasing money they didn't really need. So maybe the question isn't 50 versus 65. It's, if I wait another 15 years, what am I actually gaining? And what am I actually giving up to get it? And if you said that trade-off out loud, would you still make the same choice? So what's the verdict? I'm not going to sit here and say it depends. That's not much of an answer. Here's what I think. If you can comfortably afford to retire, not technically, not optimistically, I'd rather have the extra years. 15 years of freedom is a lot of life. But I wouldn't retire at 50 just because Thailand looks cheaper on paper. If the numbers are fragile, that's not early retirement. That's early risk. The real goal isn't 50, and it isn't 65. It's the earliest point where your finances are strong enough to support the life you actually want, without turning every month into a financial worry. So if you want the whole video in one sentence, retire as early as it honestly can, without turning retirement into an anxiety problem. Because money buys security, but time is what you're actually trying to buy with it. So ask yourself, what are 15 more years of working worth to me? And what are 15 more years of freedom worth? Because eventually you're going to run out of one of them. If money wasn't an issue, would you retire at 50 or wait until 65? Let me know in the comments below. And if this video's got you thinking about your own plans, please do me a massive favour and press the subscribe button. It's free on the channel, guys. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you on the next one.